In a world where most people watch movies and then forget about them, 3 brave heroes join forces to watch them again and then talk about them. Join them in their epic journey as they go back in time, a decade and beyond, to revisit and break down films from a vast array of genres. Do these movies hold up over time? Are they classics? Find out on Retro Movie Roundtable. Starring your hosts, Bryan Frye, John Flack, and Russell Guest. Coming now to headphones in your ears.
Greetings, all you lords, ladies, and knights of the Retro Movie Roundtable. Welcome to where we watch movies and then talk about them. Today, I'm excited to bring to you a very, very special episode. If you didn't already notice it in the theme song, we're expanding the show. We have another expert ready to join the show with us. So you've heard him on at least half the shows already. So we wanted to do right by him and bring him in the fold. Welcome your new co-host, Bryan Frye.
Evening, everybody.
Hey, and if you're worried at all, if you haven't been hearing from John lately, that's okay too. He's going to be back lots and lots of times. But as we mentioned, this is not our normal gig. This is a hobby. This is for fun. We don't get paid to do this yet, unless you want to donate to us and make this our full-time job, in which case more power to you. So.
Oh yeah, you could absolutely pay me for this. That would be key.
I'd get you an episode every day if you want that, just for the record. So if there's a wealthy millionaire out there who loves this show, get with us. Anyway, Bryan, are you ready to join the show?
Yeah, absolutely.
We've hazed you. We've given you the blood pact. There's the spit oath. There's the blindfold test. And you've made it through all of the initiations. You made it through both of the gates from the Neverending Story. You didn't get zapped by laser vision. And also you were able to deal with your inner self. So you faced your true self, and now you're here. So.
Yeah, most of the hazing came from other movies too.
Yeah, we realized once Bryan did 10 things. Once Bryan did, still doing it.
That's gonna happen for the rest of time. Like, I don't think you'll ever be able to to get that one.
Yes. So once Bryan came in and did How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, we said, you know what, this guy's host material. Bryan, why don't you tell the people at home a little bit about yourself? We know each other, obviously. I met you back in 7th grade, so that was 1997 for those of you who are counting. And if you're recalling the original intro episode, I met you and John at the same time in homeroom. Kick that off, and what do you remember from that?
Yeah, they definitely, they put everybody together alphabetically, so the F's and G's were in the same place, and yeah, I had known John for a little while at this point from elementary school, and it was fun getting together in junior high school because we were doing a whole lot of new stuff together. We were finally able to change classrooms. You got to feel like you were really older at that point in the education process. But I am 34 years old, from Charleston, West Virginia, like John and Russell, and we all went to high school together before splitting ways for college. I have been watching movies for as long as I can remember, and that's not just from a standpoint of like Disney movies, obviously, stuff you get shown as a kid, but I remember very distinctly when I was about 11 or 12 years old that I didn't really have a hobby, like anything at all. And I wanted a hobby. So I was thinking about it and I was watching a movie and I was like, you know what? I should just do this. I should get into movies. So I started collecting movies. This is back in the Stone Age of VHS. For those of you who are listening, those are actually cassette tapes.
Great investments.
Right. And by the time DVD came out, I had invested in roughly, I think, 325 VHS tapes.
Oh, the pain of it.
Yeah. And, this is before Walmart did fancy things like digitizing that stuff for you. So I ended up just doing a big yard sale. There were 3 movies on VHS that I kept just because I really liked them and just couldn't part with them. The first one being Clerks, one of my first true love movies, not from an actual romance standpoint.
Love that movie.
Yeah. It's just fantastic. Another being Bad Boys with Martin Lawrence and Will Smith. That was the first R-rated movie I ever purchased as well, and I had to do it at my grandparents' house because I knew my parents wouldn't let me have it. So I bought it used from a video rental store. The other one was just kind of a weird one. It's just one that kind of makes me happy. It's an EDM movie an EDM movie called Groove. And I just always really liked that movie, and I didn't have any really great story reason why to keep that one, but I ended up keeping it anyway. But yeah, I wanted a hobby. I really wanted something that I could be like, yep, this is what I do. And that ended up being it. And I think at this point, I probably have somewhere in the ballpark of maybe 500 DVDs and call it half that in Blu-ray or half that added on in Blu-ray. So I probably have somewhere around 700 movies. And then I've got some digital stuff. I've been the curmudgeonly old man who's having a hard time moving directly to digital. But at this point, so I'm not looking like a hoarder, I understand the benefits of it. So yeah, I've got a ton of movies, and I really focus on a different scale when it comes to rating movies. And I've touched on it a little bit while we've been doing podcasts. I watch, rate, and make my purchasing decisions on a very unique scale. Instead of just doing a 1 to 10 on how good a movie was, I'll give it a 1 to 5 based on how good the movie is, and then another 1 to 5 based on its rewatchability and entertainment factor. So you can have a movie that is absolutely fantastic, checked off all the boxes in terms of direct cinematography, but if it's a downer or if it's something I'm like, okay, that's great, I'm never watching that again, it's going to get a 5. Now, that's not going to burn it down, but again, ratings on two different pieces. So I do have a collection of movies that there are some brutal Rotten Tomato reviews on some of the movies I own, but I love them because they're entertaining.
So rewatchability is a really big deal for you.
Is a huge deal for me. There are probably 20 movies that if I'm flipping through the channels and it's on, I own a DVD of it, a Blu-ray of it, and probably a digital copy of it as well. But I'll still watch it on whatever channel I fell on because there it is.
Plus, it's always fun to see what they substitute out in TV. So
yeah, especially for Bad Boys, man. If you watch Bad Boys on like TNT or something, it is an insanely different movie. And just like we talked about when we did Coming to America, that completely changed that movie for me because I had only ever seen it censored on television.
Sounds like it was a little more conscious for you than it was for John or I. When did you realize that you had a thing for movies that was more than like most people around you? Because everybody kind of likes them. But when did you realize that you're an enthusiast?
Probably based on the fact that I was constantly I would go up to Hardy County, West Virginia, and stay with my grandparents for a chunk of every summer, and I would pester them almost on a daily basis to take me down to the video rental store. And I mean, these guys saw me all the time, and I mean, I would buy or rent probably, let's say if I was staying for 2 weeks, I would probably end up renting at least 14 VHSs during that time span, because in rural West Virginia, you don't get many channels.
It's true. And it's worth noting that Bryan did all of this while being in good, reasonable physical shape too. So I don't know what's your secret to watch as many movies, read as many books as you do, also get some video games in, and listen to a ton of music, and also not be like 500 pounds. So good for you for that.
Well, the nice thing on that is you can literally listen to music while you're doing anything. So I fill every non-professional minute of my day listening to music. I'll turn Pandora on while I'm in the shower and can't hear it just so it's on when I get out of the shower. That really is the secret to the music piece. Working for Barnes & Noble, I'm an assistant manager with Barnes & Noble. The book piece, I have far more books than I will probably ever have a chance to read, but I need to read this queue keeps growing because I'll see something and want to read it. So I just try to keep pace with that as best I can. I do a healthy amount of audiobooks as well to kind of supplement with the with the paper copies. Again, you can fill in, any portion of your day with an audiobook that, that's like adding reading to whatever else you're doing. So I'm walking my dog and I'm listening to this book. So that really started heavily because I was working about 45, 50 minutes away from home and I needed something to fill in that drive time. I was going to say the movies piece, I've been slacking. I don't get to watch nearly the volume of movies that I used to or that I'd even like to. I've been averaging about 4 movies a year in theaters, and then everything else I just have to play catch up when it drops on DVD. Although I watch way more than 4 movies a year, it's tedious, man. You got to really triage what's really important to you in theaters when you have a hard time getting there.
Well, more movies come out than used to as well. That's one of the things I kind of I log my personal ratings for movies on oddly enough just like a Word document, and it's one of those things that I've noticed that if you go back and look at the number of movies that were released back in the 80s and stuff like that, it seems like there are far more that come out now than they used to. So and with indie movies being a bigger thing than used to be, I mean, Netflix, there's a lot of movies that just, the movie count's much higher than it used to be. So it's not just you, it's harder to catch it all.
Yeah, no, I totally agree.
We talked about how you kind of discovered movies and fell into the love with them. But if someone were to ask you right now, what is it you like about movies? Which is a different question.
Well, it's all about storytelling. A really important thing about movies, what they really do for us in general, is they allow you to turn your brain off, but still use it. So it is a place you can go and hear a story. It's an audio visual book. I mean, you can clump the two things together. So many novels now are being committed to the screen. First and foremost, just as a caveat here, I always recommend reading the book first. I just think that it's all about storytelling, and I love a good story.
Definitely the first part of what makes me like a movie too. I've always said, if you wrote your movie into a book, and then you have a boring book, then you automatically have a bad movie. That's kind of how I feel about it. Looking at you, Citizen Kane.
We all have one movie that everybody tells us we're supposed to like it, but we don't.
Yeah.
Every single person.
AFI told me that was the greatest movie of all time, so I went in, and perhaps with unfair expectations of watching the greatest movie of all time, and then I got through it and I was like, well, that's not the greatest movie of all time. I debate this.
I have a funny story about John and trying to get me to watch it. Not the greatest movie of all time, but he was very, very high on Requiem for a Dream. He was like, this movie is phenomenal. He was telling me little bits about why it's so amazing and everything. What he didn't tell me is it is the most morbidly depressing movie in the history of film.
I have not seen it.
I'm not sure. I think I left Schindler's List happier than I did watching this movie.
Wow.
I actually told him after the movie was over, I wanted to kill him. I was like, I'm going to go to church now. Have a nice evening. That movie will wreck your soul. Schindler's List will wreck your soul too, but this one's worse. Is my point.
I have not seen it, but I might have a little more threshold for this than say our frequent guest, most popular guest on now that you're a host, Chad Robinson, said I don't like to be put through movies. That is something I don't feel like. I won't go as far as Chad will on that one, but yeah, I definitely feel that way to some degree too. So I have not seen it. I've been warned by you and some other people against that one. But speaking of John, and I really wish he had been here, but like I said, life throws you some curveballs. He's got a little one. He's got his hands full in North Carolina. That's why we need some extra help here. But for fun and old time's sake, what is your best movie memory with John?
I'm gonna go with Gladiator with Russell Crowe, and not because of anything that happened in the movie or anything that happened around the movie with him, but because that was the single movie that we have watched the most together. Not because it's like, hey, let's sit down and watch Gladiator over and over and over again, but because based on me crashing at his house in high school, him being my roommate freshman year in college, it has the single best DVD screen to sleep to. We would put on Gladiator, hit play. One or both of us would be asleep before, he's a slave in the arena. And both of us would wake up to Now We Are Free playing as the DVD menu is going because it was such a peaceful thing that no matter when you woke up in the middle of the night, you're like, oh, that's nice. And then you just go back to sleep.
Special sleep therapy from Bryan Frye. You can take that one. That's interesting that you say that. I my head goes to the Wedding Crashers where you've got Vince Vaughn's character, and he has to go every birthday of his best friend Owen Wilson, and spends the night and carries a sleeping bag over. So I'm now picturing you like ringing the doorbell on John's door in Greensboro in early March, being like, "It's your birthday, let's watch Gladiator," and fall asleep to it. So,
yep, that would definitely be what would happen. I'm trying to think of some other funny stuff that's happened around that because I'll take blame too. I'm sure he has a story of a movie that he thoroughly loathed that I put him through, but I don't know because it's probably something I really like. But when I put somebody through a bad movie, I mean, it's like Sharknado or something. Like it's owned bad, not.
That's just campy.
Yeah. To this day, one of my favorite movies, and I have no really good reason why, is 13th Warrior with Benicio del Toro.
Banderas, right?
I love that movie. I love the book. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I say Del Toro? Sorry.
You did, yeah.
I actually think that they did that in a commercial recently where it was Del Toro getting confused as Banderas. So that's funny. Anyway, he plays a poet from, I think, Baghdad. And, he's super Spanish accent, which, you can make some arguments on why that would still be valid. But it's a Viking movie that, man, I mean, it just gets crushed by a lot of people, but I love it. It's, I'd call it a guilty pleasure. I think I'd stick by it no matter what.
I enjoyed it. I mean, it's not like in my top movies, but I certainly enjoyed it. In many ways, I think this prepared him for his greatest role in Puss in Boots.
Oh, of course. You can draw a lot of parallels between those two movies.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, I like Banderas, and that's an underrated movie. That's fair to say. Similar question, and I wish I could ask John the same question at the same time. But anyway, best movie memory that you and I have.
The first time I got a chance to show you Clerks. I mentioned it as being one of the VHSs I held on to for posterity. And this is a movie that I have. I don't want to use the word pushed on other people, but it's just one of those things that people need to watch this film.
Oh, so funny. We will eventually get to it on the show, as in our quest to cover every movie.
But I'm a huge Kevin Smith fan. Clerks brought me there, but if there was a movie that ever just really nailed it home for me, it was Chasing Amy. So that's another one that I would highly recommend for any film enthusiast who has not seen it. You could make the argument that it's a romantic comedy. But it is it's Ben Affleck before he was huge, and just an overall really entertaining movie.
That's definitely another good one. But I remember that night that you're talking about. It was actually, I don't know, let's say John's 14th birthday, give or take, and he had a big lock-in at St. Matthew's Church in Charleston. There was a lot of basketball played that night. There was a lot of video games played that night. And as things were definitely quieting down and most people were asleep in some corner of the church somewhere or not, you showed me probably the least church-friendly movie ever. But you and I did not I didn't sleep much that night. I might have actually had an all-nighter. I can't remember. I definitely was sick the next morning, and I regretted staying up that late and super cold as well. But it was worth it because Clerks was a hilarious movie. So, and that's definitely one of the things I remember. And I remember my friend Brett driving me home because I did not have a car, and I was like sitting there coughing, like, and like a super tired. And he's like, "Man, you sound like you got really sick last night." I was like, "Yeah, it was worth it."
I actually, this wasn't the same night, but I was at another lock-in at that church with John one time, and it was like the middle of winter, and I didn't pack well. I didn't bring enough clothing. I think I might have forgotten my sleeping bag or something. Anyway, everybody had gone to sleep, and I was just wandering around because it was actually really cold in the church, and I'm not a person who gets cold very easily.
No, you're not.
I ended up sleeping on top of a heating grate in the wall. So
It was cold there.
it was one of those big units that sticks out from the wall. So I got into the windowsill where the thing was blowing, and that's where I slept that night because I was freezing my butt off.
This has nothing to do about movies, but while we're on talk about getting cold at night, John's house was always, in my opinion, frigid, and I do get cold easily, but we always stayed in this like strange little breakfast nook instead of like the living room, because it was like this place that we could just be more ourselves and spread out and play tons of video games, watch movies all night long. And I didn't have the mission of staying at John's that night. We're in high school this time, and I wake up in the middle of the night absolutely frigid. It's like October, late October, and the windows are open from where it might have been nice at like 4 p.m., but everybody else is like asleep. And I didn't pack anything. I didn't have a sleeping bag, and like I tried to like pull a blanket out from under somebody, but they were like sitting on top of it. And then like went into the rest of the house looking for a blanket, trying not to wake up his mom, and so in the end I pulled his old dog's like dog bed on top of myself, which is covered in hair and everything like that. And that's another one of those nights where I woke up the next morning absolutely like a head full of like crud and stuff like that, because like allergies and whatnot of the dog. And like I woke up and I was just like, but I was so cold I like crawled under this like dog bed.
Oh yeah. Oh, it is true. Listen, I honed my ability to sleep really anywhere from sleeping in that room. I fell asleep in wooden kitchen chairs. I fell asleep in love seats. It was like yoga, the place, yeah, especially when you had like 6 crammed in there. It was like yoga, trying to get yourself into a position where you could at least shut your eyes. And this is always while something mega loud is playing in the background, like Full Metal Jacket or something like that.
Yeah. So let's hit you with a couple of, quick ones. What is your favorite genre of movie? Like, what kind of movies do you enjoy most?
Well, like most of the folks that have been on here, and we've talked about this a few times, I'm a huge science fiction, fantasy. Those movies are definitely my favorites. I also am a huge fan of historical fiction, Kingdom of Heaven, Gladiator, Man in the Iron Mask. Three Musketeers, the Disney one with Sheen and Kiefer Sutherland and Oliver Platt. So those would probably be my two favorites. So historical fiction and science fiction.
Okay, yeah. And then what is your favorite director?
Based on that vein, I got to go with the guy who does both so well, and it's Ridley Scott. He can do action. He can do the historical fiction piece. He can do science fiction via Alien, Blade Runner. Oh my God, Blade Runner! I can't say enough good things about that. And I'll also give a nod. Ridley Scott's going to be my favorite, but one of the guys that I have the most hope for in the future in terms of what he's been able to do so far in his young career is Denis Villeneuve. He did Blade Runner 2049, really did justice at making a sequel to a movie it's difficult to do a sequel people would respect. And he's currently in production of a remake for Frank Herbert's Dune, which is my favorite book of all time. And I can't wait, because after seeing what he did with Blade Runner 2049, I have trust.
Seems like a good man for the job. I agree. So, Bryan, who is your favorite actor?
Favorite actor, I would say based on all of his work, and then one movie in particular, just because it really blew my mind. I was deep in willing suspension of disbelief on it. So I'll go with Kevin Spacey. He really just blew my mind in Usual Suspects. Also one of my favorite movies of all time. After I saw that movie, I actively began trying to figure out movies early, just because that one it got me. And how much fun is it when a movie really gets you? I mean, it's the best. But I can tell you that I started being more the detective at the beginning of movies after I watched Usual Suspects.
I loved him in The Negotiator with Sam Jackson.
Oh yeah, definitely. Or House of Cards. I stayed up way too late one night watching the first season of that. Another guy I'll give a little hats off to just because sheer body of work is Jack Lemmon. Big Jack Lemmon fan. I remember as a kid watching Grumpy Old Men, and Legend of Bagger Vance is one of my favorites. He's a great guy. So really like Jack Lemmon as well.
The Odd Couple is so good, and I also like The China Syndrome a lot as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So, who is your favorite female actress?
Favorite female actress is probably Kate Beckinsale. I've been maybe just a little bit in love with her ever since Underworld. But I know, in all seriousness, I really do think she's fantastic. I think that she's one of those people that if you could put her in roles that have traditionally gotten more viewership, she would excel at them. And I don't know. She's done a couple things that are kind of off the beaten trail. She did a movie called Whiteout, where she was a FBI officer assigned as a protection detail to scientists in Antarctica. And I mean, it's one of those movies you'd find in like the $2.99 bin at the grocery store, and it'll end up being one of the best $2.99s you ever spend. So yeah, just stuff like that. I'm also a big Charlize Theron fan. We had spoken
she seems
about
to be
that.
a real popular pick for this. I've asked this question before to some of the guests before, and Charlize has popped up several times.
I like her acting style. She definitely adds a mystique that is very old Hollywood to me. And I'm still riding the high of watching Atomic Blonde, which was phenomenal. So that's just kind of where my head went right away.
Both of those are great choices as well. All of those are great.
Well, and, just as we were talking about kind of like throwback people too, the Jack Lemmon piece and the Golden Age of Hollywood, Judi Dench is just wonderful.
So, Bryan, what made you want to do a podcast, specifically the Retro Movie Roundtable podcast, and become a full-blown host?
Well, it's doing something that I honestly would have been doing anyway. A little bit more in depth, but it actually gives me a reason to exercise a muscle and a love that I really have, and I get to do it while talking to two of my best friends from back in high school.
Absolutely, and we want to share that with everybody out there. So again, please reach out to us. We do want to hear more from you guys on Facebook and on the group there. Give us a like there. And write to us on Retro Movie Roundtable at yahoo.com if you would like to be on the show. We're always looking for people to talk to reach out to, and we want to share our enjoyment of movies and our friendship with all the listeners out there, and we hope that you enjoy this.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Look forward to hearing from you.
Welcome, Bryan. And in any given week, you'll have two of Bryan, John, and myself, and hopefully this makes life a little bit easier to manage, because there are some weeks that go by that are hard to get it all in on. So until next time, thank you for listening. Take care of yourselves and watch more movies. Bryan?
I will go straight Admiral Akbar on this and say, it's a trap.